Rich Ventura with Sony B2B, and greetings from sunny New York City at the first day of the B2B AV Showcase. We're really excited having you all with us today. And what better way to kick off our first in-person / virtual hybrid event than bringing on some of these great individuals we're going to introduce in a second here. One thing I want to make sure as we go through this, please post any questions you might have. We want to make sure that it's very interactive, and it's a great opportunity to really talk with all of you. So without being any further, I'm going to introduce our amazing panel here. And first, I'm going to introduce a great friend of ours from Shen Milky. And it's just great when we get individuals to join us. And so Randy Tritz, this is a great friend of ours, Shen Milsom Wilkie. I always forget the Milsom. Can't forget that. It's really important. Partners won't like that. Second person I want to introduce onto this panel is a great friend to everyone in the industry, Joey D'Angelo from Joseph D'Angelo and Associates, also known as DNA. Third person I want to introduce is Keith Yandel from AVI Systems, and just a fantastic partner for many of us in the industry. And fourth, kind of doing cleanup for us and everything, and I'm really excited to have join us as well, is Josh Starkey from SKC. How are you guys doing today?
Terrific.
Great.
Getting better.
Doing well, Rich.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate all of you joining us today, and I'm really excited about having this conversation. But before we start, why don't each one of you spend a second, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your organization does. I'm going to start with you, Randy.
Randy with Shen Milsom Wilkie. Been with the firm about 20 years now. It's just long enough to fail to figure out what the color of dirt is. The role in the firm that I have is that of a partner. But as a firm, what we do is technology from AV to IT to security. We do acoustics, and we also do medical equipment planning. But our role is that of the consultant, not as the sales or installation team. So we're generally on the front end of a project where we're doing a lot of the needs analysis and really trying to determine what the clients are looking for and how to apply the technologies to that for the other folks to be able to ultimately do the installation. So our role is domestic and international. We work in K-12 all the way through business and government and medical.
Excellent. Mr. D'Angelo, I know you're in the middle of a big move. Thank you for spending some time with us today. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hi there. With Joseph D'Angelo and Associates, otherwise known as DNA, and we're a consulting firm, but we don't really look at ourselves like that. We look at ourselves as concierges. We do and design whatever you want, and just try to make everybody's lives easier along the way. Whether you're an end user, an integrator, an owner, whomever, we're just here to work and get the big projects built and done.
Excellent. Keith, I know it's nice weather down in San Diego for you guys today compared to all of us. Enjoying a little cooler weather.
Bragging about it a little bit before the call here, 75 and sunny. AVI Systems, I've been with AVI a little over 17 years, over 20 years in the industry. AVI Systems is a systems integrator. The company's been in business since 1974, national, over 22 offices nationally and now globally through the GPA. But myself as AV practice manager, I work closely with manufacturers, identify solutions, and I work internally with AVI resources from sales and technical services for what solution is appropriate for a customer, how do we deploy it, and how do we support it.
Excellent. And Josh, like I said, you're on cleanup here, so down in I think you said you're down in Charlotte today, so tell us a little bit about SKC.
Sure. Yeah, SKC is a design build integrator. We design, build, and manage collaboration solutions. We like to leverage the best partners like Sony, incredible employees, and leverage industry standards to provide tailor-fit solutions based around our customers' needs. And really, we're just passionate about technology, and we want to share our passion and experience with other businesses and help them communicate better.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk about really kind of try to have us going through 4 different directions. We're going to talk a bit about the innovation that we're all seeing in AV, and it wouldn't be a conversation without talking about how much IT has played into this. We're going to talk a bit about return to the office. I think that's been a big topic a lot of us are having in our conversations with our customers and our partners. Talk about how the market has been verticalizing and what markets are recovering, what verticals are recovering quicker, and what kind of applications they're all getting. And then really, where do we see the industry going? It's time for us to put our get our magic 8 ball out and look at about what the future is, knowing we've got Infocom here in a couple months, and what are some of the things that we're going to see tied into that. So let's start about on the innovation with AV, and I want to talk about these last year and a half. It's been an interesting year for all of us. COVID, shutdowns, having to hide away in your home, no travel. I mean, it's been all over the place. So Randy, why don't you talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've seen this last year and a half?
All of what you just said, every end of it, all across the board. The fun part of it is, I think one of the things that we've seen, and I know I've talked with Joey about this and other conversations as well, is the experience of having to use technology has become the norm, whereas previously, a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was more of an exception to the rule and was something that people would kind of put up with if they had to. Now that we've all had to do that, what we're finding out is that we actually can use it, and it actually does work. Each one of us, or predominantly, or most of us anyway, are in our home environments. It works well. It gets us where we have to go. But we've also made some adjustments in terms of how we use technology, and I think that's the biggest thing that we're seeing. And I'd love to hear what the other counterparts are here saying about the fact that the use of technology has become so much more of a user experiential, as opposed to an expectation of it works, it doesn't work, I don't like it, what do we do now?
Yep. So Joey, I know one of the calls that we had with you, we were talking about a lot of just the cool projects you're working on, but I think the craziness of what we've seen in AV. I mean, what have you seen this last year and a half evolving in the project you're involved in?
Really, I'd say that the Software Codec of the Month Club, as I call it, has come into maturity. So all those platforms out there are now an essential part of every aspect of business. Yeah. And then I've also seen the platforms like Teams and Slack and Workplace and GChat and all these other platforms are also at the forefront of business practices. And one of the things I'm actually really fearful of is platform overload, because I have a whole other computer monitor here that has 6 different applications open that different people use to communicate with them, and it's starting to get to be too much. And we're seeing the development of all these software platforms that enhance collaboration and communication and whatnot, and everybody uses a different one. So we are headed to, I think, a critical mass of, software and hardware, and everybody has different flavors and preferences. So I'm a little concerned, actually. I'm happy that it's all happening and everybody in the AV industry can make them all work just great. But it's more of a big picture thing that I'm worried about.
Well, it's funny, Joey, if you look at, take a step back and look at the digital signage community 5, 6, 7 years ago. I mean, there was 300 different flavors of the month. They all did kind of the same thing, but they were also different. And we saw some of that consolidation happen due out of necessity. And I think COVID helped with some of that too. But I agree. I think there's a lot of apps out there, and it's just amazing to think about how much we work with now.
I don't really think I want consolidation or big fish to eat small fish. I just want interoperability.
Exactly. Big key.
All right, cool. So how about you, Keith? This last year and a half's been an interesting year, to say the least, right?
Yeah, and it's on the AV side, it's resulted in some challenges or I guess new expectations for the meeting room. So what we were just talking about is all the different collaboration platforms everybody got used to using. So 1 minute you're using Teams, the next you're on Zoom, then you're on WebEx or whatever. From a home office perspective, or conducting those meetings from your laptop, you either needed to download an application or just use a browser. There really wasn't really much in your way of being able to join that call and, I guess, say, meet your customer where they are. But now you come into a meeting room that all it can do is Zoom, or all it can do is Teams. Now that's evolving somewhat, because now Microsoft is unlocks some guest join capability with Zoom and now WebEx, so you're not totally on an island. And so we are starting to see some interoperability, but a lot of new expectations for our meeting spaces, to where we kind of use the phrase "bring your own meeting," BYOM. You know, what looks more appropriate now for a meeting space is maybe just a single USB-C connection that does everything you need it to, you know, launch your own platform.
I'm trying.
Josh,
to go there.
go ahead. Joey, what were you say? You're trying to get there?
I'm biting my tongue for a minute. I'll wait.
So Josh, what do you think? I mean, this all sound resonating pretty well with you. Are there anything else you're seeing or thinking?
No, right on cue with the other panelists. You know, the main thing I've seen is just the broad adoption of these collaboration software options, and I think the pandemic really just pushed things into hyperdrive, and we saw so many facets of daily work affected by the need for remote collaboration. And you know, I feel like I speak to people daily who you know, have traditionally met in person, and maybe, you know, we're all on the same campus and used to just booking a meeting room and meeting everybody in there. And you know, they've introduced the remote collaboration, video collaboration, and even the ones that were already leveraging it, you know, have really had to change their approach. So, you know, Zoom and Microsoft have really been pushing each other to add features rapidly and kind of, you know, just catching up to parity and challenging the other WebEx as well. But, you know, ultimately the end users are the ones who are benefiting from the features, and the result is a better, more natural meeting. You know, as integrators, we don't only have the experience within our own organization's practice, but we understand the experience of each of our customers. So that gives us just a unique perspective that we can share with everybody else.
You know what I find fascinating about this discussion is we have all these really amazing people all on this panel, and everybody was asked, what are some of the innovations you've seen? Nobody mentioned a single piece of hardware.
You're right.
Yep. Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Very interesting.
But
With
that,
innovation though, and this one, you may or may not agree with this, but I also say that there's somewhat of a good enough revolution brewing with the user base, largely brought on by these.
Yep.
But it's if I can see and hear you, that's good enough. It doesn't have to be the utmost best quality for my day-to-day operations. You know, and a lot of that also I think came from fighting with platform A and platform B and platform C, and you were just thankful to get your camera working or your microphone working as an end user. You get to where it's just good enough. And as AV purists, I think we sometimes struggle with that.
It's like the old Betamax VHS for all of us that are at least got a few white hairs in our head, where Betamax was a far superior product, obviously, but the VHS won out because it was just good enough. But it also is akin to the discussion that where I thought Joe was going with this thing. It's a good piece of a discussion, though. The ability to have so many platforms and the ability to have, as you brought up before too, the ability just for bring your own meeting with us. One of the questions and one of the problems that I run into and seeing more and more of is in the corporate environment, somewhat in education, but more in corporate, we're seeing that the challenges of all pushes coming through with all the new updates and all the firmware upgrades and everything else creates an environment where not everyone has the update and the upgrade at the same time, which creates a big gap in the user experience in itself. So that's becoming a bit more of a challenge than it was 2 years ago, where if you got the latest product, well, no, but we can use it anyway because it still plugs in.
Yep.
That's what prevents us from being able to go full BYOD, right?
You bet.
We design a conference room to where I can bring my laptop and just connect to the room and use its audio and video devices.
Yep.
The success or failure of that system depends entirely on my laptop or my phone or whatnot. Yep. And corporate is not willing to go there. They want to control those firmware updates. They want to manage those rooms.
Sure.
And we're left with non-interoperability.
Yeah.
So, and you know what it comes to is the big,
remember to bring their device, you know?
Yeah.
The other problem.
Yep. And so what it comes into then is we have the big argument that we're all listening and hearing and seeing, AV versus IT. I mean, and it's that, I mean, it's crazy to think that there's this argument going on, AV versus IT. And think about everything you guys have said right now. Is there a single thing that's not using cloud? I mean, the cloud is touching everything we've been pretty much talking about, right? And the cloud historically has been in the IT world, but it's in our AV world. We're talking about collaboration. Collaboration's historically been in the AV world, and it's coming into the IT world because we have Microsoft and other ones doing that. And then Joey's talking about updates and software and all these things. This area is getting tighter and tighter and grayer, that this AV versus IT, it's not an argument I like hearing about because it's divisive, but it's the discussion that we have to keep having.
Well, I think part of it's it started with the hardware world. You're not going to connect that device to my network, because I think for the most part we're seeing a little softer approach to that whole discussion, because I'm not pointing any fingers to anybody, but AV guys are starting to understand what the network's all about. And they understand the language and what it means and how to isolate and how to play the game with it. So that the IT guys are finding some level of confidence for that. But the challenge of now the software, the firmware is becoming that secondary component. And how do we get around that? I think is really, it's a conundrum that we'll find a way as an industry. But right now, I think that's the point that's becoming the bigger challenge, as opposed to you're not going to connect that to my network where it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's
well. How common is that a conversation for you over at SKC? I'm assuming at SKC you guys are hearing a lot of that, and I think Keith, you as well over at AVI Systems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those conversations have to be happening like every 5 seconds, not alone every day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, historically, it was maybe a control system to go on the network and provide some sort of remote interface. And these days, it's rare that, everything's not on the network. And, we're passing video and audio over the network, and not just, standards-based endpoints. We're talking just, local distribution of audio and video is very common. And, I think we've really gained some trust of the IT departments. And, it helps that the manufacturers are, hosting things with Azure and AWS and the same, the same cloud that services that are being leveraged for the rest of their software stack. And so, to your point, the lines are great, and it does add a lot more data and metrics available to the IT department. So there's a whole lot of benefit from it.
Those discussions, they have to happen early, and you really have to have a defined strategy around how you're going to handle your software and your updating. Firmware is super critical. These collaboration platforms are seemingly unlocking new features weekly, right? And a lot of those features can rely on firmware. And you guys have probably heard the term sneakernet. Sneakernet, put on a comfortable pair of sneakers and run down the hallway and thumb drive everything into existence. That's a horrible way to go. Use the cloud where you can. It saves everybody time and money. So it's super important.
Yeah, I was going to say the AV-IT argument is over. There's no argument. There's no division. There's no nothing. We need to stop talking about it. The IT people don't talk about it. We need to stop talking about it. All our bases belong to them, as that old video game would say.
Yep.
But what needs to happen though is the way the IT industry perceives our networking needs. It's almost I feel like it's almost annoying, because they don't want to burn 8 switch ports on a conference room. That costs them a lot of money to support and manage and deploy. And the AV industry has succeeded in putting a network port on everything. But the problem is that I would like to see the AV industry just make everything IoT and get them all on the Wi-Fi. I think Wi-Fi is reliable enough. I've got 197 devices on my network at home, and they never drop off. And these are consumer devices. I think corporate IT and educational and all these really smart people, they can handle that. But the AV industry is not the area. But please, projectors, displays, anything we can make wireless would be really great, because it would help the AV industry absorb and be more effective in the IT world, because they can be monitored.
Well, I can tell you on the display side, we got you covered on that one for sure.
Yeah.
But it's tough. It's tough. I mean, it really is tough, because as we talk to a lot of these corporate accounts, I mean, take corporate off the side for a second. Government accounts.
Right.
You use the word Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and they start running for the hills.
Well, they can afford the ports.
That is true. That is true. But I mean, it is definitely, I will take the AV-IT conversation off to the side. Now it's the Wi-Fi and hardwire conversation.
Very similar.
So,
Very similar.
speaking of what we're talking about here, I mean, we've got this big thing that's happening now. We got this thing where it's return to the office. You've got companies that are starting the process of opening up. Some never shut their offices down. Others have decided that we're never going to reopen our office, but you have this grouping that are coming back to their offices. What are you seeing in those conversations? Because it can't be business as usual. I mean, the office spaces have got to be different. They've got to be having those different conversations. And maybe what we'll start is at the consulting side. What are you seeing? And then at the integrator side, we'll move into that. So Joey, in that return to that office, that environment, what are things that you're seeing or hearing or having those conversations with customers about?
They're all precisely in alignment with consistent public policy. So
Which says it all.
That answers the question.
It says it all.
A lot of the companies that we work with, and we've been blessed to work with some great companies, have just kept building and used it as a period to catch up and get things done. But a lot of them have been starting to talk about return to work and starting construction back up. But I'm not so sure in the last couple of weeks. I mean, I'm starting to know more people with Corona and COVID now than I did before, and they've all been vaccinated and stuff like that. So I was looking at this question ahead of this event today, and I was like, it's really hard for anyone to predict what's going to happen at this point. I really honestly don't know what to say. Everybody's still building, everybody's preparing for a return to work, and everything's refreshed and everything's ready, and there's partitions and open and ventilation and all that, but I don't know. It's a very difficult question.
Yeah, I think the new norm is there is no norm, but what it really comes down to is people finally, I think, and leaving the corporate world where it's at for the moment, in the corporate world, what they're finally starting to do is look at their workflow and what that means to the new office environment and the new collaboration communications environment, as opposed to, well, we've done it this way for the last 30 years, or company XYZ down the road, our competitor does it this way, so let's just do the same thing. So they're taking square pegs out of the round holes and are trying to find ways to build the square holes for them. What that is, I don't think there's that standard to go with what Joey was saying. There's nothing out there that really defines that, but it's up for a big discussion right now, everywhere you go.
Yeah, I think the AV industry as a whole has enabled a hybrid approach. Hey, we locked down this week, we're not that week. No productivity is lost.
Right.
I think it's a good thing for us.
You bet.
So now
Agreed.
we flip it over to the integrator side. I mean, you guys what are you guys seeing when it comes to this return to the office? I mean, are you pretty much seeing the same thing that we're hearing from your counterparts, or I mean, what are customers telling you?
Well, what we are hearing from most of our customers and what we kind of think is going to happen when the dust settles is the workplace, I guess you could say, is the new meeting place. So a lot of organizations realize that they can do just fine with a good portion of their workforce working from home, but they still need a place to meet for certain types of exchanges. When you really need to collaborate, we were just talking about this internally. We had a planning meeting a few weeks ago, and the amount of ground we covered in face-to-face meetings, you could not capture in a virtual exchange. Because when we're talking like this, inevitably you pause, you wait for somebody else to interject. When you're in the room, you can read body language and you can just cover so much more ground in a shorter period of time. So when it comes time to be collaborative and really kind of get your big idea hats on, we think that's going to continue to happen at the workplace, but it's an on-demand relationship with the workforce where, by and large, they work from home, they come to the office when they need to. So you're going to see an uptick, I think, in remote booking systems, office reservation for temporary work facilities, but then you're going to see a big influx, I think, in experience centers, because you are going to need a venue that can capture an audience that does much more than we can achieve in an online meeting. So experiential environments, I think, are going to become much more attractive, much more common in work facilities, and then the workplace is just a meeting place.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's you're right. It's all about the user and the experience. Good point.
If you think about it, that is exactly right, Keith. It's become a conferencing center. It's a place where you go if you absolutely have to meet, you want to build some group, team, esprit de corps or whatever. But once this pandemic is dead and buried and behind us, we're gonna rebuild all those places again, and we're gonna densify them up again, and it's just gonna be a continuing thing. I think I've been doing this for 22, 23 years now, and there's always some trend that we're all confronting, and making the best out of. And I think this is just part of life, and it's exciting and fun.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, we've certainly learned a lot, since the start of the pandemic, and we've seen a little bit of everything. I've seen organizations that are, reevaluating their footprints. There's obviously been a whole lot of unused square feet over the last 17, 18 months, and I'm sure for the CFOs that's a tough pill to swallow. But we're seeing people reevaluate the size of their meeting spaces, even if they have reduced capacity coming into the office. They want to be able to support social distancing. So we're seeing huddle rooms becoming, single person phone booths. We're seeing, the small conference rooms or the new huddle rooms. We're even seeing, NPRs and cafeterias and stuff like that becoming the new boardroom. So, but the biggest thing we're seeing is just video enabling all of those spaces. So even if they use them for in-person meetings, they want to be able to support it, even if they're 100% back today. I think we all learned that things can happen very quickly, and you need to be prepared for those, and be able to support people on desktop applications as well as in person or in the office.
Definitely. And, I want to throw one of the questions that got thrown out there, and it's kind of almost like perfect compared to about what we're talking about here with the RTTO and stuff. And someone had posted out, there's this big opportunity with all the UCC rooms, collaboration rooms and platforms. Performing the basic collaboration functions is really table stakes. Is there a bigger opportunity for AV consultants, integrators, bundling a service for their customers, analyzing all the data gathered from the collaboration sessions, and then providing end user reports on how to tweak, improve all the AV systems? It's kind of an interesting conversation. I know we talked about, AV as a service for quite a while. What are all your thoughts?
I know there's an organization that we've been working with in Chicago that does exactly that. It's all data-driven, data gathered, data performance. It's not just limited to the collaboration. It goes through the entire work environment. I think data is going to drive it, no question about it, especially if you get into the educational world that has to drive it there to be effective. It's going to fall into the corporate world, and the government world is already starting to do it as well. The good part is the tools are there for it. The challenge is the use of that and the delineation of the information that you get and the categorization of the information that you get out of it. There's more information available today than anyone is going to really be able to effectively use, but they will develop the tools for that. Is that a service in itself? Yeah. I don't know that it's really fully developed yet and how that's going to hit market, but I'm seeing people starting to venture into that marketplace right now and try to figure it out.
Yeah, I would say as far as data analytics, just a few years ago, I would say that in a lot of cases, the technology and infrastructure required to get the data exceeded the cost of the problem it tried to solve.
Yeah.
But now technology has gotten smart enough that data gathering is taking place already. And so what do we do with people counting as an example? A lot of soundbar systems can count people now. So we would know, from a consumption perspective, are all of our, 12-person meeting room sized right? What's the average user base inside that meeting? So there's value there, and I think we can get at it for almost free nowadays in some cases. But you said something else, as a service, so like a true operational model to technology. I think the industry is finally starting to round the corner on what that might look like. What we say internally is AV that behaves like modern IT. And the idea is, the IT customer can do everything, on a consumption model through the cloud, except for these pesky meeting spaces we haven't figured out how to position that with. And I think we're starting to finally see some different approaches for, a truly operational approach to AV.
Sure.
It's really interesting with our clients and even with us internally. Every time we have a problem, the first thing we do is we go, how does it affect us? And how can we fix it with code? How can we write some software or whatever? There are hardware devices and software platforms out there that are happy to charge you money to get data about stuff. But, I think it's up to us to coach and counsel and answer questions. But in a lot of instances, I've had clients go, hey, we want to do this and we want to do that. And I'm like, go find someone on Fiverr and like, you know, have them write some code for you, park it on that Zoom PC, and, you know, there you go. Or, you know, so I think there's a gradual leaning trend towards custom software development because it's getting easier and easier for a lot of people to do to solve a lot of these problems.
And where I think that makes sense, Joey, is what you're going to see. There's only a certain amount of custom pieces that are going to be able to be written and be effective. I think ultimately somebody's going to start developing a bunch of appies, middleware appies that will start to fall in place behind the device and the products, but then spit out to like a Power BI, so that the common user can develop their own information out of their own database. But that middleware piece is the piece that you're describing that in my mind makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Power BI is where it should end up, or that's, you know, the BI platform of the month club or whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
Careful, we
Who's
might have
next?
a million more apps for you to deal with, Joey.
I feel like I'm seeing a lot less proprietary software from the AV industry. You know, you guys mentioned Power BI, and we're seeing a lot more APIs and being able to integrate that data into a single pane of glass. You know, the IT industry's been doing it for a long time, and they don't have to bounce between, you know, several different applications based on what they're trying to monitor or what kind of data they're trying to parse. But we're getting there. We're catching up slowly. But you know, after we finally got them, you know, convinced everybody that we can put these strange boxes on their network, and so now we need to leverage that information, and it helps, you know, it helps determine ROI. It helps determine, you know, how much use these are getting, how you know, how often you need to refresh, and then in the AV as a service, I think it plays right into that. You know, everybody wants to have, you know, the latest and greatest, and keep up. I mean, it's technology after all, and so being able to you know, have a 3-year, you know, refresh lifespan or whatever it may be is certainly attractive. It's just like leasing a car over buying it. You know, you can own it, or you can always have, you know, a new model. So.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been asking, and I actually saw one of these questions on here, and, you know, Josh, I'm going to kind of throw this back at you a little bit, is people are asking, well, what's my expected lifespan if I do something like this? I mean, are we saying that now you're starting to look at something that can go into perpetuity? Or are we still thinking, you know, everyone needs to always talk about, well, I refresh my laptops every 4 or 5 years. I refresh this every 3 or 4 years. I mean, what are we thinking for a model like this?
It's tough to say. I mean, there's no one size fits all, and obviously budget's always going to come into play. But you know, I feel like 3 to 5 years is kind of typical from what we see. But you know, you rewind back 18 months ago, and things are looking a lot different. So, you know, not knowing what's around the corner, it's tough to put any side of, you know, any type of, you know, annual you know, lifespan on it or anything like that. But you know, I just think as technology grows, you know, we still have a lot of people using standards-based endpoints, and they've invested so much in the hardware side of things. And as we move away from the hardware, like Joey said, and it is software, I think it's a lot easier to, you know, switch gears and you know, abandon and try something else. And it's something that we try to design around. You know, we try to understand, you know, how our clients have worked in the past, how they work today, and what they expect to do in the future, and we try to design around that and provide scalable solutions. So if they decide to switch to the platform of the month, you know, a year from now, they're not, you know, throwing out a bunch of hardware and ripping and replacing.
Yeah,
well, I think that's.
I know. Oh, go ahead, Randy.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think part of what helps that process, and I go along with exactly what you're saying, is it's not as much of a hardware coming full circle, but it's not as much of a hardware solution anymore as it is a firmware. So 2 to 3 to 3 to 4 years, you know, you're going to see many firmware upgrades. But does it change the platform itself? Probably not today, whereas it probably did 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So firmware upgrades and being able to refresh that product or those products and give them more functionality and more lifespan, I think is very real, and it fits right into that time frame that you're talking about.
Yeah, like feature releases with collaboration platforms. One of the other things I think that came out of everybody working from home is we were all sized the same in a collaboration experience, right? We were all basically talking heads, all the same size. And now you go to the meeting room and you've got a dozen people, and from the far end experience, they're all really tiny and you can't tell who's talking. In a traditional meeting room experience. Well, now there's new features being unlocked. New camera technologies that automatically frame all those people, so the far end still maintains that talking headshot even though everybody's in the same room. So there's a lot of new things coming on that are driving technology refreshes much sooner than they were in the past.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to kind of change. Oh, go ahead, Joey.
I was just say, I am so sick and tired of the Brady Bunch conferences, though.
Come on.
Like, this is as good as we can do. Like, this is 2021. We got to put goggles on our head to pretend like we're in a room with people. Like, where is this? Is what we need. We need Wi-Fi on all of our devices. And we need to be able to meet with people without Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
No goggles. No. Anyways.
Yeah, it's funny, as I was telling one of our customers today at the in-person part of what we were doing. It was so nice to physically stand across from somebody and talk to them. And I would have even been happy if it was a hologram. It's just something different than what we're seeing every day. And you get tired of the Brady Bunch. You get tired of the picture-in-picture experience. And that's when you have somebody who actually goes on camera. Those who won't go on camera, then you're just talking to your computer all day long. It's definitely something I think that's caused a lot of the burnout and I think the frustrations that people are having these last 12, 18 months. Maybe changing the topic a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about what all of you are seeing when it comes to verticals and the verticalization that's been happening. I think we've heard so much about, well, this market's recovering faster than this one, so spend all your time here, or this market is going slower, ignore that market, or this market's buying. What all are you seeing? I mean, are we kind of doing the overload like Joey was saying, so all these millions of apps? Are we doing the same thing when it comes to verticals? Are we just overloading it? Or, what are your thoughts when it comes to this verticalization that's been happening in our industry?
I'm waiting for
anyone can jump on that. You know what? I'm gonna throw it out to Keith first and see what Keith's got.
There you go.
Yeah, I think about that, and I don't know that I have any one particular industry that's really knocking it out of the park more so than another. I mean, corporate obviously as not that that's really a vertical, but in those markets, as people are returning to the office, there's definitely an uptick there in rethinking their facilities. But I would almost change the dialogue in a way that kind of makes more sense to me. What I am seeing an uptick in is enhanced meeting experiences for events like we're participating in right now, where you want a more broadcast quality like experience. So we're using better quality cameras, better microphones. We're being very cognizant of the lighting, because there is so much fatigue in just using a traditional platform to service an event like this. We need a more improved experience. And so we are seeing significant investment from our customers in the technologies it takes to conduct a meeting like this, because we do think that these will continue in the future, even post-pandemic. People have gotten better at these types of events, and they're willing to invest in the technology to support them. So again, I know it doesn't really answer the question. It's not specific necessarily to a vertical, but it is a point of investment we're seeing across many verticals.
So Rich,
well, I'll say that I kind of prefer this standing in front of this big camera and lots of lights around me than sitting in my office in front of a display all day long. But it's so maybe you shifted maybe from the vertical. Is it more application that we need, that you're hearing more of, like what you just said, Keith? I mean, Josh, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both, and I feel like a lot of the verticals have kind of merged together a little bit. We at SKC, we historically didn't play much in the K through 12 space, with smart boards and interactive displays and classroom stuff. But so many of the K through 12 have had to adopt video over the last year or so, and it's just been something that we've been doing for years, and so we've been able to jump in and help them out. And so I think we're seeing more and more video adoption from places that historically haven't. We're seeing, grant money from the government that's aiding these people to adopt it much more rapidly than maybe they had budgeted for. So, I think we're seeing a lot of the same trends, whether it's corporate, healthcare, education. It seems like everybody is just trying to prepare and get video enabled in as many places as possible.
Yeah, it used to be, we're going to put 2 codecs per floor. Don't want to spend too much money. Now it's every room's got to have it. And, we're seeing we don't need HDMI anymore. Just use the Codec of the Month Club to get our presentation up on the screen. It's verticalizing, that's for sure. But what was really interesting to me is last week I was in a meeting and I was like, okay, we can distribute this content all over this campus. And, it can be this, it can be that, we can use multicast network traffic and, SVSI or, NVX or whatever. And they said, yeah, we'll just use Zoom.
Yeah.
We've even looked at using Zoom PCs mounted in a head and in a rack with cable TV plugged into a content port to do RF distribution.
Interesting.
Funny.
You can do anything with these platforms now if you think about it.
Yeah.
We had a funny service call not too long ago. This was pre-pandemic, but we had a 3-way divisible space, and we had to roll a van up there because they were having echo issues, and we couldn't figure it out remotely. And so we got there, and we just said, hey, walk us through a meeting. And so they said sure, and they went in and they set it up, and instead of closing the partitions, which would automate the or opening the partitions and automating the control system to start acting as one system, they were actually all dialing into the same Zoom call on individual PCs. And so instead of letting the control system simplify things and doing it that way, they were so comfortable with joining the calls that they just joined the call 3 times. And sure enough,
like there's a control system user interface problem.
That we're all creatures of habit. We're all creatures of habit.
Exactly right.
So, looking at our time, I want to, be cognizant of make sure we've got a lot of time to answer a lot of questions that are coming up, but also a little more of the discussion. And by the way, this has been just an awesome discussion. I love getting all of you together and a lot of the ideas that we're bouncing around. That's the great thing about these RVonAVs. It's not we're going to do this regimental, at least 5 questions. It's let's have a conversation and discuss about. And I think one of the things I'd like to hear from all of you is, we've got Infocom coming, we got NAB coming, and, some are going, some aren't going, some are on the fence. I mean, what do you think the future and let's get the crystal ball out a little bit. If you're walking into Infocom here in a few months, or you're watching it virtually, what are those new techs or that new features or new things that you think are going to become the next million gadgets that Joey's worried about having too many apps of on his screen? What do you think that you're going to see out there? I'm sorry, Joey, I'm going to pick on you a few times. So I get to see you next.
Keep bringing that up. Maybe
somebody will buy into it, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get syndicated. If we get syndicated, they'll all pick this up.
There you go. I think the one thing that I'd be looking for, and I do know there's some applications going down that path in other conversations, is that ability to standardize and cross-platform standardize. So it isn't the Zoom of the month, or it isn't the gateway of the month, or any of the software compatibility products we're talking about, but they become more unified. I think that's where I'd like to see it be going, and some of the things I'm really looking for when I get down there.
Yeah, unified communications.
Big time.
Unified communications. Okay.
Mm.
I'm with the UUC department.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I certainly hope that the interoperability and the walls come down a little bit. I think that's been the biggest struggle, and just recently, because so many people want those platforms, and then they want it to be native, but there's not, outside of the guest join capabilities that Keith mentioned, there isn't a great way to have a native solution and not have meet in the Zoom conference room, or let's meet in the Teams conference room. And so, I think we're all hungry for that, but, I don't know that it'll be here by October. I hope so. Outside of the BYOD, I think we're just kind of at a tough point with that. But, the other thing that I think we'll see a lot of more and more is artificial intelligence and AI, and just being able to, to automate things as much as possible. When I got into the industry, it took, multiple racks to run a system that, today we can do with, a few RUs, and we used to have full-time operators running these systems, or, event specialists that would go in and, man the joystick. And now we can do so much with an unmanned system and have production level quality. So I think we're going to see more and more advances in automation and AI, and I'm excited about it.
Big time.
Yeah, interop is definitely huge. And when we say interop, we have to get to the point where it's not interop, but you give up this, you give up that. Like if it's using the guest join, you have to be let into the meeting. You can't join it if you originated it. That kind of thing. But I think we are seeing kind of if we're going to stay on the collaboration thread, so to speak, the big three, I guess you could say, are Teams, Zoom, and WebEx. But the one that's sneaking up is Google. And I haven't seen much interop discussion around that yet. But what I am hearing from customers is a pretty steady flow of transition over to Google as a platform, because the workforce that's coming in were raised in a Google classroom. And so they are very familiar with all things Google, and somewhat a fish out of water, so to speak, with the traditional Microsoft solutions and things like that. So they just meet the new employees where they are, go Google, and be done with it. So that's interesting to see how that shakes out long term.
And that's kind of what I was going to add. And Keith, you're exactly right. Like, they'll change to Google or Frugal or Boogle or whatever is next. But at the end of the day, no matter some of the smartest people that I've known in the IT world, who are way smarter than me, all they care about is the experience. How happy the people that they have to support are going to be. And that's why we don't have interoperability, because I have to worry about 10,000 users worldwide. So I'm going to standardize on this, and I'm going to do a really good job at it and make sure that they're all happy. As soon as you open your ecosystem up to the Software Codec of the Month Club, then the experience could suffer, and that's going to be a big decision, or it could be an experience hit. So I don't know where this is all going to go, but when I go to InfoComm this year, and I'm so looking forward to it, I'm going to go in person and hopefully be there. I feel like NAB and InfoComm overlap and crash this year, but I'm looking for things that are going to make that experience better for the people that we are tasked with designing and installing things for. All the software and the interoperability, that's just us. It's us making great points about where the industry is going and some of the challenges, but the experience is key. And that's what that's what we're going to be looking for.
The bottom line for it all, isn't it?
Yep. And, I'll say, I'd be remiss about saying, we're looking forward to seeing all of you at InfoComm. We're definitely looking forward for those face-to-face opportunities to have these types of conversations. Because I think these are the conversations that, while it's easy to get on a video call on whatever the conferencing of the day, the month, the week is, these types of conversations happen so much more often, so much better when you're sitting on the show floor and you're talking about the platforms and the solutions and the screens and how everything works together. And you're coming over and saying, oh, I saw this or I saw that. What are your thoughts, right? That's, I think, a piece that we've all missed for this last 2 years, since the last ISE. Last year in Amsterdam, last year. It's amazing. It's been almost a year and a half since the last big show like this. So we're definitely something we're all looking forward to. So, one of the things I like to always throw out there a bit is, and this will be the last big question, the most challenging question that I throw to everybody is, one of the things I always like hearing from everyone is, what was that technology that you engaged with these past year and a half, maybe on your personal and as well as your work, that's just been instrumental or just most important thing you've seen? And I've heard everything from air fryers to electric bikes, to Netflix. Teams, I think, has been thrown out there a few times. Love to hear what all of you're looking at, and what's been that tech that you've played around with. Maybe I'll start with Keith.
I mean, I would say, and this is kind of kidding, but not really. So, as my kids were at home trying to go through 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade for the first time virtually, which was a disaster in itself, I had an increase in background noise that I didn't have prior to, in my home office. So noise canceling headphones were amazing, right? And not just noise canceling for me, but for the far end as well, right? So that they didn't realize that I had my 2 sons battling it out on the other side of the wall there, So I would say that was a bit revolutionary. And I knew they existed beforehand. I just never really needed them, right? So I didn't use them that much, but they were definitely a lifesaver.
Oh, I can vouch on that one wholeheartedly. Josh, how about you?
Well, I took a lower tech approach to drowning out the kid noise, but I've got an oscillating fan that sits right outside of my office door, and it doesn't. It's not magic, but it does help. So, I'm in kind of an interesting position because I've been doing remote collaboration for a lot longer, for preceding the pandemic for quite a long time. So, I won't necessarily say that anything anything drastically changed for my work day to day, but I do appreciate how accelerated all the features and firmware and everything were developed, because I guess both Teams and Zoom and the other platforms that we leverage daily look a lot different than they did in 2019. So maybe not a great technology specific thing, but I appreciate all the advances that we've been able to enjoy.
Yeah, I always laugh when we get on a Teams call and I hear, platform's changed again. Oh, it looks different. It's like especially the last few weeks or so, like, oh, hey, this is new. Oh, this is different. It's been always interesting to see who notices that.
I just need annotations so bad.
On the roadmap.
Oh,
on the road.
So Joey, what's that tech that you've been playing, or that you've been enjoying or using, and it's been a lifesaver for you all this time?
On the business side, we've been playing around with Unity Reflect and automating everything that we have to do over and over again, and building it all into our business-wide software platform. So we're automating everything, and we're trying to get faster, more accurate, better, and stuff like that. And this has given us a chance to do a lot of that. But on the personal front, I went and automated my whole house. I love it. It's been a lot of fun.
Now, is the new house all automated already before you arrive?
No, I have to do it all over again.
You know what? I had to do it too. When I moved 2.5 months ago, I actually go, you know what? I'm having the builder do it this time, because I did all the automation, everything else, and I still redid half of it because it wasn't exactly what I wanted.
I enjoyed it, and I'm armed with lessons learned. So
there you go.
Oh, well, Randy, what do you got for me?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and just kind of playing off of where you're just at, what I've done is I've taken both Google and Alexa, and I've paired them into the house here, which also then dovetails into the office here. But put the two of them together on the same network, playing against each other, so I can make one learn a little bit from the other and up the game a little bit as it goes down the line. It's a heck of a challenge.
You having them arguing against each other too? You have them arguing against each other too?
They do. Yeah. Alexa, you should see what she calls Google sometimes. I won't even get into that discussion.
Oh man. Well, like I said at the beginning, I am so appreciative of all 4 of you taking some time out of your busy days. You guys are fantastic partners for Sony. I look forward to seeing all of you hopefully at Infocom or at the next the first personal event we can all be together at. And I do look forward to welcoming you over to the Sony booth and seeing a lot of the great technology and solutions that we have, which really cannot happen without the partnerships we have with all of you.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Those sitting through this, we're going to have another RVonAV tomorrow, and enjoy the rest of the virtual conference. Thank you.